Thank you for tuning into this program. I am Pastor Mark Bateson, and I'm going to be bringing you a special message from the Word of God. The theme for our message today is Paul's great affliction in Asia from 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 8 to 11. The Apostle Paul experienced a great affliction in Asia that he did not believe he would survive. Listen to Paul's testimony recorded in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 8 and 9. For we do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, of the affliction we experienced in Asia. For we were so utterly, unbearably crushed that we despaired of life itself, why we felt that we had received the sentence of death. Do we know when and where this great affliction occurred? Some have suggested that Paul's great affliction occurred in Ephesus when a mob incited by Demetrius and his fellow silversmiths went after Paul, as described in Acts chapter 19. Others have suggested that Paul's great affliction described in 2 Corinthians 1, verses 8 and 9, was his being stoned, as recorded in Acts chapter 14. Still others suggest that Paul's great affliction was his fighting with wild beasts near Ephesus, mentioned in 1 Corinthians 15:32. We don't know for certain exactly when and where Paul experienced his great affliction. We do know that the affliction was so severe that Paul did not think he and his company would survive. Paul bluntly states in verse 9 of 2 Corinthians chapter 1, why we felt that we had received the sentence of death. Look back at your own life. No doubt you remember some very difficult struggles that you weren't sure at the time you would make it through. But like Paul, you did make it through with God's help. Paul explains that God had a great purpose for his severe affliction, but that was to make us rely not on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead. God allowed Paul's great affliction so that the apostle and his company would rely not on themselves, but on God, who raises the dead. God likewise allows us to experience difficult afflictions so that we will rely on him and not on ourselves. Just think of that. God allows us to experience difficult afflictions so that we will rely on him and not on ourselves. Sometimes we only learn to trust God in times of great difficulty. In verse 10 of 2 Corinthians chapter 1, Paul confesses his faith in God's delivering power. God delivered us from so great a peril, and he will deliver us. On him we have set our hope that he will deliver us again. Like Paul, we can confess God's delivering power for us in future times of struggle. God delivered us, and he will deliver us yet again in the future. Paul goes on to affirm in verse 11, you help us by prayer. You help us by prayer. The Corinthian Christians help Paul in prayer. We likewise help one another in prayer. So let us faithfully hold each other up in prayer. When we hold one another up in prayer, God answers our prayers, and this multiplies thanksgiving among the people of God. Paul explains this in verse 11 of 2 Corinthians 1. You help us by prayer so that many will give thanks on our behalf for the blessing granted us in answer to many prayers. Are you going through a difficult struggle at this time? God will see you through it. God will see you through it. He is working in you so that you will trust in him and not in yourself. God is faithful. He will see you through your time of affliction.